And that meeting will be an exact replica of this morning's, except that we will offer it in both English and Spanish. Ms. Reynoso, our assistant principal, will translate all of the questions and responses this evening for families that have Spanish as their predominant language. So again, I welcome you to our meeting. I have the main focus today is our reopening. What I'd like to do is I'm going to spend just a few brief minutes kind of reviewing what we as a district and myself as the principal see as the key threads to our reopening plan, some of the things that have come up as questions often from parents and community members. And then I'd like to open things up to questions, because the questions from families and the feedback from families all along has been so helpful for myself, Mr. Nichols, our superintendent, and all the administrators as we work on this plan. So to start, I hope everybody's been well. I hope your summer's been fun, but most importantly, I hope you've been safe and healthy. I think as a community, we're working hard together to kind of bring this pandemic down. And I'm proud of what we've done here in Sag Harbor. I think we really have come together, and we're doing our part. In the school community, I am also very proud of what we've been doing with regards to our planning for reopening. The dialogue over the last few weeks and months has been, rich discussion. It's been very helpful for all of us in the school. And I think together as a school community, we've put together as best a reopening plan as we can. The absolute focus is the health and safety of all. That's the focus. That's going to remain the focus. And that's going to drive our decisions, the health and safety of course, the children, but also our faculty and staff, and then how everything in the school impacts the greater school community. So much of what we discussed today is always going to go back to that, the health and safety component. But in addition, of course, when we approach September, we're getting excited about getting back to school and getting the children back to not only their learning, but also connecting with their friends and connecting with their teachers. So I'll also be touching on some of those pieces. So September 14th, which is a Monday, it's the Monday after Labor Day, is marked as the day when school will reopen for the children. And here in Sag Harbor, families are at a point where they're making a decision about whether or not they're going to send their children back to school in person or start the year off selecting the remote learning option. And the confirmation form that the district put together went out late last week, and we're asking families to complete that by tomorrow afternoon, Tuesday at 3 p.m. And that information is really helpful for us as we solidify our planning. So what I'd like to do now is just touch upon a few highlights of what the reopening will look like here at the elementary school. So social distancing and the cohorting of students is a driving force with our planning for reopening. Within the Sag Harbor Learning Center, we will house our pre-K classes and our kindergarten classes. They will be located at the former Stella Maris, now known as the Sag Harbor Learning Center, newly renovated building. I was just actually down there Saturday. The building looks amazing. It's really coming together. So I'm excited to see children in the building. It's been a lot of hard work over the last couple of years. So that's come to fruition in a very timely manner. We're very lucky to have that space. And in the Sag Harbor Elementary School building, we will have grades 1 through grade 5. We are referring to all of our, typically refer to our groups as classes. We're going with the cohort term, just to differentiate the fact that the groups are going to be much smaller. We are grouping in sizes of no more than 12. So we will have cohorts of 12 or under, and the goal being that it provides for plenty of space within the classroom. Students will be within their classroom and spaced out 6 feet apart. That number 12 allows us to do that. It also limits the interaction between the students. And throughout the course of the day, those cohorts, to the best of our ability, are going to remain distinct from one another. So they will work as a team. They will learn together as a team in the classroom. And when they have to move to other parts of the campus, they'll do so as a cohort and stay together as a cohort. So for example, if they're outside, at times they'll do so as a cohort. They'll re-enter the building as a cohort. And just to reiterate, those will be groups of 12 and under. The wearing of masks. Masks will be worn by all who are in the building: students, faculty members, staff members. If there are any visitors, visitors would be very limited and only on an essential basis. They will have to wear a mask. And that will be throughout the course of the day. Masks will be required. We will, however, because we understand that that can be challenging, we will be working in mask breaks and multiple mask breaks throughout the day. And of course, I can touch upon more as questions come up about masks. Arrival and dismissal at the elementary school. The plan for both arrival and dismissal, again, is going to be focused on maintaining safety and the social distancing. So our plan is to have a staggered arrival approach, trying to spread out the arrival in time increments. Right now, our plan is to do groups by the alphabet. So if you're A through G, you'll arrive at this time, and et cetera. And we believe that that's going to enable us to maintain the social distancing at a time when typically there's a lot of congregating. There's not going to be any congregating at arrival or dismissal. Now, I'd like to touch briefly on what a morning will look like for Sag Harbor Elementary School families. We've all been reading a lot about the pandemic, of course. We've been living it for months. And I think something that is so important to just reiterate is that we get through this when we all do our part and we work together. A key component of the reopening plan for Sag Harbor School District is that every morning, all families are going to be asked to complete an app which will have them attest to the fact that temperatures have been taken, as well as answer some questions related to the COVID-19 precautions. And this is probably, if you have had to have a doctor's appointment or a dental appointment, it's very similar. It's those same types of questions, trying to focus all families on doing their part at home each morning before children get sent to school. Staff members will also be completing that same app every morning. And the key part will be, have you been in contact with anybody that has had COVID-19? Do you have a temperature? Do you have any of these symptoms? Those will be the types of questions asked each morning. So that will be completed at home. Upon arrival, all staff members, faculty members, and of course the students will have a temperature scanning. So families will have taken temperatures at home. If there is a temperature at home, students do not come to school. If there are any of those symptoms at home, students should not come to school. But assuming that all things are favorable, the children would come to school either by bus or dropped off by their families. And then we actually decided as a district to set up temperature scanning stations. And this is a scanning tool that checks all who arrive, and we're looking to see if their temperature is above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. If it is, they would then, as a student, move over to our nurses station and have their temperature checked by the school nurses. And that would be done so similar to how they would do in the nurse's office. And then we would go from there. Assuming that everything's positive, the students would enter the building, move to their classrooms, and begin the day with their cohort. Lunch will be eaten in the classrooms. As a cohort, the students would take their masks off to enjoy their lunch, and they would remain in the classroom while they're eating. And then there would be a recess block where they would spend some time outside. The other question that's come up often is what is the day going to look like? How is it going to look different? And I'd like to just go back to the fact that health and safety is going to remain our priority throughout the day. But as a school team, we are going to be able to replicate all the wonderful things that happen at the elementary school. I think the children are going to have a great educational experience. The learning will be very similar. Our teachers are outstanding. They're ready to provide a rich educational experience for the children. We are also working very hard to make sure that the special area offerings are still there, whether it be art, music, those types of opportunities. We're going to make sure we blend into the day as well. But the delivery may look different than what we're all used to. So I think we just have to be flexible, be prepared that things might seem a little different than what Sag Harbor Elementary School normally looks like. So those are a couple of the key points that I felt were important to address this morning. And I know that there are a lot of questions from family members, and I would love to do my best to answer those now. I preface everything by saying that it's possible I do not have the answer right now. And if that's the case, I'll be happy to get back to everybody. We'll be continuing conversations in the coming weeks. And I think, some of the information that we might not have will become more clear as the days progress. So I'm happy to open things up to questions. I think we can use our chat box if we'd like to do that, or you're welcome to just raise your hand. I see many of you on the screen. I don't see everybody. But if we can have respondents ask their question that way, I think that would be a fine way to do it as well. Okay. If you'd like to type a few questions in, I'm just going to quickly check on one thing with Miss Mayer. She needs my help with one thing, and I'll be right back.
Ms. Reynoso, can I ask you a question? I don't know. Can anyone hear me? Yeah. I missed the beginning of this meeting. I don't know if anyone can share with me if they spoke about mask breaks and how often those would be and how long they would be. Thanks. Hi.
You good, right, Ms. Mayer?
It wasn't covered, so we might have to wait till Matt comes back.
Betty, it looks like you're muted.
Thank you.
Okay, my apologies. We're actually in the midst of doing some hiring, and we were just completing a candidate packet, and we had to get that over today. So I overheard a question. I thought it was a good one.
Hi, Mr. Malone. It was from me, Erica.
Oh, hello, Erica. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you.
Good. So
Okay.
the question is about masks. I mentioned in the overview that masks will be worn by all day long within the building. However, we know that that's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge not only for the children, but it's going to be a challenge for the adults. As I've been driving throughout the community or seen families in town, I know that everyone's doing a really good job with the mask wearing, and it's one of the keys to battling this pandemic. So I'd like to start by just encouraging everybody, if you have not been making mask wearing a regular part of the day, and the children will be returning to school in person, I think that's a key over the next few weeks. Building up stamina with mask wearing is going to only help the boys and girls be able to do so during the school day. But with that all being said, it's still going to be challenging, and we understand that. So mask breaks are going to be regular, they're going to be often, and our goal is that they're going to be outside as much as we can. So within the schedule that we're working to finalize, there are actually going to be extended mask breaks, which I had a meeting with Coach Cottrell and Coach Katz. We're going to leverage our phys ed department and blend mask breaks with physical activity. It's kind of makes good sense. Getting the children outside, not only for the break from the mask, but also the fresh air, is essential through this whole thing. So each group is going to have an official morning mask break with the phys ed department and an afternoon mask break with the phys ed department. And those will actually be, our plan is to have those be as long as 20 minutes. And that will be in addition to the recess that they would have or any other outside time. Where, for example, if the weather permits, maybe a class could actually be done outside if it's conducive to the learning. So that's kind of our thinking. In addition, I have great faith in my faculty, and as we meet together that first week before the children come, this will be an important topic, and they are going to have the ability to give mask breaks to the class whenever they deem it appropriate. So
that's awesome, Mr. Malone. I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm just really excited to hear that answer so far. Thank you.
Oh, great. Well, I'm happy that plan is, something that families feel comfortable with. I'm anticipating that the first week is going to be a challenge. I think it will be the first few weeks, probably at that point. But I also, I know our children are amazing. They're going to respond well to this. We're going to work together. We'll make adjustments as needed. But I think as long as we understand that plenty of mask breaks outside will be our preference, I think if we go with that approach, I think we'll be okay. Okay, let me take a peek at I'm going to go right down the line in our chat box. So the first question is from Ms. Hans. Will there be an orientation for new students? So this is something that I'm going to answer yes, in the fact that when new students come to the district, helping them acclimate is essential to their success. So that's a given. How we're going to do that, though, I don't know at this point. We can leverage the technology to do it in part. I think we can share key pieces of the school day plan with those boys and girls, let them meet some of the key players in the school community. So doing something remotely to satisfy that orientation piece, is something I know we can do. I just am not sure yet about any kind of in-person orientation. But we're going to work on that and discuss it more as a district. Next question comes from Ms. Russo. Will students be sent home if they have COVID symptoms other than a fever? So I'm very happy. Ms. Kriegsman, our school nurse, is with us this morning. And Beth, I'm going to answer that question, but anything that I do not include in the answer that's essential, please add. So the answer to the question is, if children have symptoms, will they be sent home? If children have COVID symptoms, the symptoms that are noted in our reopening plan, they're noted in our health and safety frequently asked questions. If they exhibit those symptoms, they will be sent home. The answer is yes, they will be sent home. And then there's a process from there that must be followed before those children can return to school. They do need to consult with a physician. So parents would need to consult the physician. They will need to have a COVID test, and that test will need to be negative, and then they will need to be symptom-free. And once those three pieces are accomplished, then the children can return to school. Beth, did I overview that correctly?
Yes, we're in a much different situation than we were last year at this time. So our policies are going to be a lot more strict, and they're very much dictated by the New York State Department of Health. So we have not as much discretion as we have in the past. A lot of the newer research is pointing towards concomitant symptoms, where a kid can have symptoms and actually test positive for strep and still have COVID. So that's why the testing is also included in part of it. Also because kids can have very mild expressions of the illness too. So we really want to work with everybody together, and we're certainly here for questions.
Right. So, and in answering that question, thank you, Beth. I'm going to take an opportunity. Sometimes I'm very redundant with things that I want to get across to the group, but I think that the answer we just gave to the question goes back to the app that we're setting up in the morning, and the ask of families to do their part every morning to take a good look at their children, not only check their temperature, but check for those symptoms, because the net of it is if a child is sent to school with those symptoms, they will be coming back home. And not only is that disruptive for a family, more importantly, they've now come into the building with all the other children with those symptoms, and that's not okay. So we're going to need everybody to do their part every day. And again, that's how we're going to get through this. Okay, what is a mask break? We touched upon that. Will there be a pre-K orientation? And the answer is yes, under the same parameters as I mentioned with the overall orientation thought. When and how often will we be cleaning? So great question. The cleaning is going to be often and rigorous. We're working as a team with Paul Wilkin, our Director of Facilities, and of course, Mr. Bedell and Mr. Barisha, Mr. Davis, who are here during the day. And we've designed a plan where there'll be regular cleaning throughout the building throughout the day. And that's in addition to the very thorough cleaning that will be done once the students and staff are out of the building in the afternoon. We unfortunately are going to be not able to do any after-school programs to start the school year. So to start the school year, there won't be any after-school clubs. We will not be running Shape after school. And that's in part to the fact that we won't be able to cohort students during those programs. But in addition, we do need the time to have the building empty to do the proper cleaning that we know is so important. So we have those protocols in process. We're finalizing that plan. We've added misters, which are machines that we can utilize in each classroom to help with the cleaning process. During the school day, we're going to focus on touch points. So doorknobs, we're going to try to limit their use. We're going to keep doors open so that students don't have to touch doorknobs. Rails on the stairwells are something that we'd focus on. We are turning off the traditional water fountain and only utilizing the hands-free water bottle dispensers. Those examples of how we think we can limit any possible transmission by limiting what everybody's touching. But in summation, there will be thorough and regular cleaning throughout the school day. Question about cohorting. Have the cohorts been established? And right now, the answer to that is no. The cohorts have not been established. We are in the process of roughing out the cohorts. Obviously, we know the students' placement by grade level, but I am awaiting the important responses from families, which the deadline has been set for tomorrow at 3 p.m. And upon receiving that data, which will delineate students coming into school versus families that are choosing the remote option, that will then allow us to finalize the cohorts. My goal, well, first and foremost, my goal is to set up the best learning environments for the children. So that always is our priority. But the goal will be to get that information out to everybody on or around September 1st. If I have to take a little bit more time to ensure that we've put together the best cohorts to support the children's learning, then we'll do that. And it may delay when we announce to children who their teachers will be and who their classmates will be for the year. Morning program, great, wonderful question. I, along with a lot of the faculty members, and I'm sure family members, have been thinking a lot about morning program. It's what sets this school apart, in my opinion, among other things. But morning program is such a key part of the experience at the elementary school. We are going to have a morning program every day. In the beginning, it's going to be a remote version, but it will be broadcast live. So we'll almost be taking on like a little live broadcast each day. And we're planning to set up a little morning program studio, and I would like to make that available to everybody. Obviously the students in the building, but also family members that would like to tune in. And as time goes on, we'd like to incorporate all the different aspects of morning program. We're just building that plan now. Okay, so here's a question from Ms. Koplik. How does it work if we decide to switch from in-school learning to remote learning? Okay, great question. And let me take an opportunity at this point just to talk a little bit about the remote plan, and then I'll answer the question to be specific. So as I mentioned at the beginning, families in the Sag Harbor district are being asked to select the option of either in-person schooling or remote learning. The remote learning plan at our elementary school is going to have a few key elements, some of them similar to the spring, but many of them different. So we're going to use Google Classroom throughout the district as the, call it like the learning system or our learning hub. That will kind of be our organization tool for the remote learning. Our plan right now, based on some of the preliminary data that we have, and this is data tied to our estimates of numbers of students that will select remote learning. At the elementary school, we plan to create a class at each grade level of remote learners, and they will be teamed with a teacher. It's possible that we have to, be creative with the way we staff that and maybe do so in a team approach, but nonetheless, students will be in a remote learning class, and they will meet every morning, just like classes will when they're in person, and they will have a daily schedule where they'll work on their reading, writing, mathematics, science, social studies, as well as incorporating the special area subjects. There will be work that students will have to complete independently, but I think while I was very proud and impressed with the learning opportunities that were presented in the spring, I know that the structure of the spring was something that I think agreed needed to be re-examined and bolstered a bit. So there's going to be very clear structure to the day for the remote learners, meaning a timed schedule when they have to be on the computer with the teacher, time where they will be working independently, time to return to the computer to review the lessons, receive feedback, etc. We will also be taking daily attendance with the remote learning, and we will also be, like we do at an age-appropriate way, grading and assessing. So I took a pause there just to give an overview of the remote learning. And now to go to Ms. Koplick's question, if a family decides to make the switch from in-school learning to remote learning, that will be an option. And all we are letting families know is that it's possible we will need some time to make that adjustment. So we're putting a lot of effort and energy into planning for reopening. If a family is making a decision to switch, there may be a slight pause going from in-person to remote because we're going to have to adjust some things. My feeling right now is that if a family makes that choice in the beginning, say they arrive in person, they want to make a different decision, as long as there's room in that remote class, I'll be able to make that transition, pretty quickly along with the families and the teacher. We're using the word nimble a lot. I think we have to all be nimble throughout this, and we have to be ready to pivot. And if those numbers were to change dramatically, we might have to hit pause and readjust as a full group. Okay, let's see. Another question, how many mask breaks? We touched upon that. Teresita has a question. What happens? Staff and students test positive for COVID. Will you notify staff families through a general email, keeping confidentiality? So if a student or staff member were to test positive for COVID, we will be working directly with the Department of Health. So we will be possibly notifying them if we're notified. So if a family calls the principal and says, my child was just tested positive for COVID-19, I would then contact the superintendent, and then he would make a direct contact to the Department of Health, and vice versa. If the Department of Health is notified by a physician that a child in Sag Harbor tested positive for COVID-19, they would contact us and notify us. If that is the case, one of the key rationales behind cohorting and having such small groups is that if there is a case in the cohort, we can then quickly notify the members of that cohort. So if the Department of Health discusses with us that we need to notify, we would then notify all the families of those 12 students. We would notify that teacher, and that would then be a part of the contact tracing plan that the district has devised in accordance with the guidelines from the Department of Health. Okay, Lydia's question, do you intend to provide any details on the remote learning? So I did just provide an overview. I think that just to again be a little redundant, the keys will be that it will be very much structured. There will be enhanced opportunities for contact between teachers and students. It's inherent in this remote learning plan that families do need to understand and students do need to understand that there will be independent work every day. That's just inherent in remote learning. There will be an ask of all the children to, be responsible as they were in the spring, to lessons on time and take care of the work and get things done and submit it through Google Classroom. But I do feel really confident that with the discussions we've had, in addition, the district has, I believe, done a really good job this summer of providing extensive professional development for our teachers, and they've taken full advantage of that throughout the past few weeks so that they have the skill set needed to support the remote learning. That first week, right after Labor Day, we're going to dedicate time when the students are not in the building to continue that training. And, I'm excited to say that I think the remote offering will be a strong one. Ms. Robinson asks, will the school be supplying masks or do we need to bring our own? So all families are asked to send their children into school with masks. And I would add to that masks that the children have tested out and feel comfortable with and, that fit them properly. But upon arrival, if a child forgets theirs or if a mask breaks, we will have plenty of extras. We've ordered those and we're continuing to do so. And we will be able to provide anyone with a mask if needed. Okay, Noel Franey asks, if you have chosen remote option, is it possible to switch? Okay, I addressed that. The cleaning products throughout the day. Ms. Deere asks, toxic cleaning products. I'm not going to say that the cleaning products are toxic. I don't know the exact makeup of those cleaning products. I do know that we have designed a plan to combat the virus, and the products that we'll use are designed to kill this virus. But I can get back to families with any specifics if that's something they would wish. There's a question about recess. So there will be recess every day. And as we always do at the elementary school, we get outside. We've been outside in the rain before. We do get outside unless it's frigid and cold. So we're going to be outside. And I'm even going to be sharing with families the fact that this year, I'm probably even going to push that more than normal. So sending children to school with proper attire so that we can get outside even at a minimum to get that fresh air, we're going to do. So raincoats, if it's raining, children need to wear a raincoat because we're going to go outside. If it's chilly, they need to be prepared to go outside. And obviously we're going to do that within reason. Like I said at the beginning, the safety of all is paramount, but fresh air is going to be key through this whole experience. So we will have recess every day. The children will be allowed to play on the field, on the playground, on the multi-purpose court, but they'll do so in their cohort. So one of the unfortunate outcomes of what we're dealing with is that we're not going to have the free-flowing recess that I think the children all know and love. It's going to be definitely more structured, but it is going to be providing them plenty of opportunity to run around. Masks will be off during recess. That will be, a component. And I think, although different, I think it will be an enjoyable part of their day for sure. Mr. Welch says, remote option. And I did touch upon that, but thanks for that question. Emily asked, have you considered keeping classes together from last year? Emily, that's actually a great question. And it is something that we have considered. In my experience over the years with building classes in normal times and now addressing this during this COVID-19 experience, it is a little challenging because things do change. So for example, some students that maybe had certain services as a first grader may not so as a second grader, or vice versa. Maybe something transpired over the course of a year and a child might need a different placement. But I think the rationale behind the question is a good one, and creating comfort for the children heading into the new school year is on my mind. It's on everyone's mind. It's going to be a focal point of everything we do. And that does lead me to talking a little bit about the focus of social emotional learning. the state guidance that came down was very specific about what schools must do to approach the new school year. And one of the keys that schools are being asked to focus on is supporting the social emotional aspect of a child's day. The spring was a challenge for our children and our families. This summer, while I hope everyone's had a lot of fun, I'm sure it's presented challenges for families, and children will be re-entering school in a much different place. And we as a faculty we need to remain very aware of that. So while getting back to school is an opportunity to refocus on academics and get back to our studies, and that of course will be there, we need to do so in a balanced approach. We are not going to jump right back in, and it's not going to be business as usual with regards to the academic portion of the day. We will obviously have that component, but we're going to spend a lot of time on class building and conversations as a cohort, talking about how this whole experience is affecting us, and making sure that children feel safe and feel that they have an opportunity to ask questions and feel supported by us. And I think in doing so, that's going to lend to a positive reopening of school. Okay. Here's a specific question about our remote learning from Ms. Rinaldi. Will remote be live or streaming if you pick in person and then switch to remote? So I do want to just define our remote in contrast to what our high school or middle school and high school is planning and what many schools may be planning. We are at this point not planning to do live streaming. So we will not be live streaming lessons that are happening in the building to the students at home. They will be working with a teacher in a distinct remote program. And that's our plan to begin. Things could change. And if so, we'll have to pivot. But to start, we're planning on not live streaming. If a child is sent home sick or showing symptoms, will they have the option to go to remote learning while they have to stay home? And the answer to that is yes. As I mentioned, we may just need a little time to adjust, but the answer to that is yes. If students are sent back because of symptoms, will they be able to do remote? Okay. Specifically for pre-K with regards to the mask breaks, I don't have a specific number, but know that often and outside whenever possible, those are going to be the key pieces to our mask break approach. Okay. My office is getting just a little noisy. I'm going to close the door. Excuse me. That's okay. I got it. Okay, so this is another good question. I know this has come up. This question comes from Aaron Finelli. What is the protocol for handling situations when students arrive wearing gaiters or bandanas? And this is something that we're working as a district to just define the definition of masks. There's been some discussion and some studies that have come out about what a mask should be comprised of. You've probably read that mask should have 3 layers, and there were some studies about masks versus gaiters. And I'd like to get back to everybody on that because I think it's an important question. I know that some children may be comfortable with a gaiter type approach rather than a mask, but I don't want to answer that incorrectly till we define that as a district. Okay, and I will deliver the information about the cleaning products themselves. It's a question from Matt Ivins. Can parents have input on the cohort groups? So, this is a good question, and it is one that I think many families have. And while I would love to give a yes to this question, I can't. But what I will say is that with regards to the cohorts, I'm applying the same approach that I do every year. And what I always try to do is work with the faculty members and work with parents to place children in the best environment for them for that coming year. And in doing so, we take into account their social emotional needs as well as their academic needs. And in this case, we'll take into account also, how COVID-19 may impact that. What I know sitting here today that I'm not going to be able to do is I'm not going to be able to address individual requests for cohorts. It's just not gonna be possible. And I understand why some may be asking that, but it's not something I believe I'd be able to do at this point. Willow Keller says, for parents working, and since SHAPE is not being offered, when will we receive students' estimated time of arrival or drop off on the bus? And again, I do, I very much, like all of you, value the SHAPE offering every day. We've had a great program for a long time, and it's something that we're going to continue to look closely at. If we can reinstate SHAPE for families, we'll do so, but we'll only be able to do it if things are safe and we can do it the right way. As far as the timing of the bus pickups and drop-offs, Ms. Reynoso and I are working very closely with Maud Stevens, who's our Director of Transportation. And just like once we complete the cohorting information, we're going to deliver that probably with the goal of September 1st. I see the bus information coming somewhere around September 1st. And that information would not only have obviously which bus the students are on, but the times. Now, with the time piece, those I think will be a little bit fluid at the beginning of the year. We are structuring our arrival schedule to last about a half an hour at this point. And I think I'm being pretty conservative to make sure that we have enough time to do what we need to do in the morning. And if we can tighten it up and make that more efficient, we'll do so. And that, therefore, we may then adjust the bus schedules a little bit. We always aim for efficiency, but to start this year, we have to kind of go slow and make sure that we build in the right amount of time. There's Emily mentions the push for outside, and I think we're all in favor of that, and that is definitely going to be a part of our plan. Ms. Ortiz de Zevelos, this is actually something that comes up often, and while I'm not a physician, I do. And Ms. Kriegsman, correct me if I'm wrong here, all of the symptoms that we're looking for would not be triggered by going outside on a regular basis, correct?
It's an interesting question because a cough is on the list, a runny nose is on the list. I mean, I think we're going to be reasonable, right? Like, if
absolutely.
5 minutes is not when they come in from being outside or sneezing or those kind of things, when they're switching places and all of that. But at the same time, we're going to have, and there will be a way in place, like if your child suffers from allergies and we know that those are their symptoms, if we have notes from your doctor, for example, that this is what it looks like for you and all of that, we can be a little more flexible. But the criteria is pretty strict.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, Beth. And, just to echo that, every year that we open school, we set up very structured and I would go as far as saying strict plans, and we review that as a school family. And then we also have to weave in common sense, and we also have to always weave in reasonableness, as Beth Kriegsman mentioned. So we have guidelines that we have to follow, and we're of course going to do that. But we are not going to abandon common sense. Common sense is going to be a part of everything that we do. Ms. Dodd says, so happy to hear you're working to get them outside as much as possible. So briefly, I'll talk a little bit about the kindergarten and pre-K experience at the Learning Center, because I know many of our guests this morning are probably newer parents. And the pre-K day at the Learning Center will remain a half-day program. So there'll be a morning session, which is roughly 2 hours and 45 minutes. And there'll be an afternoon session with students going home if they're in the morning session, and then a new group arriving for the PM session. The kindergarten day will be a full day, mirroring the typical elementary day, roughly 8:45 to 3:15, 3:20. And the time will be broken up between time as a cohort in the classroom. There are 7 classrooms in the new building, and each of those classrooms can house up to 12 students. There's a beautifully done playground out back. There's an area where we actually bought some little bikes, little trike bikes for the kids, and we're going to incorporate that into the day. We also had the gymnasium and some other learning spaces. So I think, in general terms, the students are going to, of course, spend some time within the classroom, but we're going to fully utilize the building to get the children moving around. Using those large muscle groups and getting outside as much as they can. That's a key part of early childhood education. So we're going to embed that into the day, and the new building's going to afford us the ability to do that. Ms. Rinaldi, or Barry Rinaldi, how many teachers are choosing remote versus online? And are we hiring more teachers? So there are some teachers that, due to health concerns, are in conversations with myself and the district, and we're working on plans for the coming school year for them. And we are also hiring more teachers. So we have been, while we've been doing all this planning, we've also been recruiting, and I'm happy to say we've found some really great new teachers to bring onto our team. So we will be adding them in the coming weeks. Okay, Ms. Bandelier, will you be supplying materials, Chromebooks, classroom books, for all the students, whether remote or in home? A really good question, and the answer is yes. Something I was remiss in mentioning in my description of remote learning is we are, as a community, we are not under quarantine. In the spring, we were under quarantine. So in the spring, we did not have the ability to get in students' hands some of the materials that we would have liked to. And that had an impact on the remote learning experience. But this fall, for remote learning, we will be able to do that. So students will have novels in their hands versus only access to digital books. Another example, I've spoken with our art teachers a number of times. They're putting together general art kits that students would have if we are in the remote experience. One of the other key components to reopening is keeping in mind that as a district, there could come a time, and I'm hoping this is not the case, but there could come a time that we have to all go back to a fully remote experience. So with that in mind, from from the very start of this school year, whether the children are remote to start or in person to start, everybody is going to be introduced and working from Google Classroom. So even if the children are in person, they are going to be at times during the day opening up a Chromebook so that they can reference what their assignments might be. They're not necessarily going to be completing the assignment on the Chromebook, but every day they will have an experience with the Google Classroom format so that they know what to do in the event that we had to move to fully remote. But there will be hands-on materials afforded the students, and those will be a part of the experience for the fall. Okay, I mentioned the remote piece. Jeff Ziegler, okay, this is, you mentioned the SHES remote won't be live streaming of a physical classroom. That's understood. However, will the remote teacher assigned be doing live Google Meet sessions with the entire remote group and potentially small groups with the cohort? So our plan is to do live instruction, both large group. So let's take, if it's a second grade remote group, they will be working with a teacher. They'll start the day. Maybe they'll start the day with a reading lesson, full group. Students will then have an assignment that they'll work on. And during that time, the teacher would then pull small groups of students together, as well as set up times where it might be appropriate to work with individual children. So live instruction will be a driving part of our remote plan. Ms. Cohen, will Windows be kept open? The answer to that is yes. Our plan is to keep our Windows open as long as that's feasible and works out weather-wise. In addition, each of the rooms are being outfitted with a standalone HEPA filter, like a plug-in HEPA filter that will help circulate the air in the room. They have a UV sensor within or a UV light within the filter, which is noted to help with knocking down the virus. How many new families are joining us per grade? We definitely have an uptick in enrollment, and that's exciting. A lot of families have made decisions to relocate to the East End, so we welcome them. We will base the placement of students in those cohorts by the age, just as we have done over the years, starting with, to be eligible for pre-K, a student must turn 4 by December 1st, 2020, and so on up the line. If for some reason there needs to be individual conversations with families about that, we would do that as we do in years past. Okay, Ms. Winter, did I address that? I addressed this question, I think, about the remote learning. If you want to add to that, or
yeah. Hi, good morning. My question was, for those that choose in person, should we have a closure? How quickly do you think we'll move to remote learning? Do you think there'll be a delay? I mean, I know you said if you choose, online and then you decide to come into the building, there'll be a delay. Same as if you were to become sick, correct?
Correct. I think that delay would be very short, but I think we have to be upfront that there could be a slight delay.
So we should expect the same. Should we need to close for whatever, 2 weeks or an extended closure?
Well, in fact, I think if the plan that we're developing goes as smoothly as I hope, I actually think that would, if we did have to go fully remote, meaning the school was shut down, I actually could see that happening pretty seamlessly. And the reason I'm saying that is because we plan to start from day one kind of developing the infrastructure for it. So everyone's going to have a Chromebook. They're all going to have the access to Google Classroom. I'm hoping that families will pay close attention to that. And that cohort could then very seamlessly move to become a remote cohort.
And they will be having the same teacher that they had been assigned in person, correct?
That is the plan. That is the plan. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so here's a specific question about the classroom makeup. Kids will be staying in their seats, classrooms throughout the day, and science and art will move from classroom to classroom. So in general, the answer to that is yes, that students will be staying within the classroom or as a cohort. So where school will look different this year is children will not be moving as a cohort to, say, a music room. There, for one reason is I think the music room is now going to become a classroom. The art room is now going to become a classroom. So that's sort of just a functional part of the response. But in addition, we're trying very, very hard to mitigate interactions. So if one teacher were to move into the classroom versus many kids sharing a space, I think the former is a much safer approach, and the guidance speaks to that. But while it's going to be a challenge in the beginning, the kids are still going to have plenty of time to get up and move around, and using that common sense and us trying to all be reasonable with what kids need. We're going to remain cognizant of that through the breaks. Things as simple as what teachers do often. They do little body breaks when instruction's dragging a little bit. Okay, boys and girls, it's time to get up, and we have to move around, stretch, do some things. That's part of a typical day anyway. So I think we're going to, maybe just amp that up a little bit. Will there be an on-site nurse? Thank you, Ms. Russo, for that question. The answer is yes. There will be a nurse here at the elementary school. Of course, Ms. Kriegsman will be here, and Ms. Poitras is going to be stationed at the new learning center. So Kira Poitras, who worked with us last year, she will be at the learning center and supporting any of the needs down there. Ms. Trotter, will remote learning be a full school day? So Dana, it's a good question in the sense that I think parents that are selecting the remote option should know that the day will be very structured and scheduled, but philosophically and what we know is best for children, we are not going to be setting up an entire full school day where the children are on the computer. That's not going to happen. That's not good for kids. That's nowhere near aligned with our approach here at the school. And I do think that the way we're trying to structure the day will guide that, and where in-person instruction here at the school will end approximately 3:20 as it normally does. I'm planning to have the remote day be set up so that the normal preparation period for the teachers is at the end of the day, so that the kids are done and off the computer a little bit earlier. I don't want the kids on the computer all day, and I'm structuring the schedule accordingly. Lydia asks, great question about lunch. I mentioned that lunches will be enjoyed in the classrooms. Most students bring a lunch box or a lunch bag to school, and they would do so again this year. Our cafeteria at this point is planning to offer the boxed lunch option. We piloted that program last year, and it was very well received. And everything that the cafeteria team is sharing with us leads us to believe that we're going to be able to offer that for families again. So families would sign up on, I think it's My School Bucks, and they can order the lunch, and then those would be delivered to each of the classrooms. So that's the plan. Dana asks, okay, so I addressed the materials piece with the remote learning, and children will have access to workbook type materials that they would, have within the classroom in a typical year. So yes, those will be in place. Okay, I addressed the schedule for remote learning. Textbooks are, as the children get older, they do shift to more textbook work. So, but that sort of depends on the grade. Okay, a lot of good questions about the remote learning, and I hope I answered those. If there are any other, here's actually a specific question about printing out material. What I'd say to that is it's possible that some material would be printed at home, but our goal is to avoid that and to provide families with as much as we can from school. I think the only reason that things would maybe get printed out at home would be if a child tends to, for example, read the material better on a piece of paper versus on the screen. Sometimes families then choose to print that out, and that may be a great option for a student. Okay. Remote plan instruction, 100% ad free. That is actually a great question. I do not know the answer. I think it's something that we should strive for, because I don't like it when kids are on the computer and those ads pop up either. I will have to get back to everybody on that, because I don't know the answer to that. Okay, I mentioned the piece about the HEPA filters. And here's a specific question about sharing of materials. The answer to that is no. Students will not be sharing instructional materials with one another. In fact, I've been working with the faculty members over the last few days to develop a very general supply list for families, and I will be sending that out shortly. My goal is to actually get that out tomorrow. Each child's going to have their own desk, and each child's going to have their own materials within that desk. And we're going to limit the materials. There will be, as I mentioned, books handed out, and there will be papers handed out from the teachers, but we will not be sharing those materials between the children. If there are any items that children use and then another group of children would need to use, for example, with the younger children, pre-K, kindergarten, maybe first grade, families know that an important part of their day is often like center time or free play time. That's an essential part of the experience at the younger ages. So we are not going to completely abandon that. We will have to modify it. And if children use materials before another child uses that, those materials would be wiped down and cleaned, maybe even taken out of circulation for a time period and then put back in. Kind of following some of the examples in town, like the library. They've done a nice job of distributing books, and then when they come back, they sort of sit idle for a little while before they go back into circulation. We'll kind of apply the same approach. So Emily asks, how will reading groups and other small groups look with social distancing? Really good specific question. It's something on my list to kind of leverage the talents of my teachers to solve that one. That's something we're going to wrestle with. Unfortunately, I don't see us enjoying 4 students at a back table with the teacher. The rooms are just not going to be conducive to that. So that's an example of something that we're going to have to get creative with. It's an important part of the learning experience, the interaction between children around the text, for example. But that may be done where that's an example of how we might leverage technology. And children are reading. And then some of these tools through Google Classroom, for example, allow for a lot of great interaction, response, back and forth. And, we're lucky to live in the time that we're in, where the technology can make that happen. So, but that's a real good question. Something, an example of something that we'll be wrestling with. Okay, Miss Garapi asked, will reading and speech services be provided for children that need them? And the answer to that is yes. So children throughout the school district have services that are provided as per individualized educational plans or 504 plans. In addition, in our district, we also work really hard to support children even at the building level. So sometimes children need a little reading boost, and it might not get to the point of special education services, but we can provide it at the building level. And we will be doing so again this year, whether they're in person or remote. Again, it's an example of, how we're going to be coming up with a different approach, but those services are important and we're going to make sure that they're in place. All right, well, the questions that have been coming through the chat screen have been very helpful. And Emily, thank you. I think that social emotional piece we all agree is really important. I appreciate your comment. So I'm happy to open it up if anybody has other questions they'd like to just ask through the mic. You can unmute yourself and share your thoughts with the group. Okay, are there any other questions that parents would like to include in the chat stream?
Hi, I have another question. I mean, I'm sure this goes without saying, but as things continue to improve, as we all hope that they will continue to improve and get better and better, I'm assuming the school will respond to that in terms of, supporting the continuous growth and immune boosting capacity of our children and teachers and everything. And also, Mr. Malone, you killed it with this talk. I'm really happy with everything that was said today. I really appreciate your time.
Well, you're very welcome. And I'm just happy to share the information that's coming from all the hard work. We have a reopening task force that's been tremendous, and they've helped throughout the summer. Ms. Reynoso and the other faculty members have been a huge help to me, and Ms. Kriegsman and Ms. Poitras and Ms. Comer up at the high school have really helped us through all this uncharted waters. But to answer your question, Erica, we as a district, we as a community, we're keeping, we are going to continue to keep a close eye on the infection rate. The infection rate right now is really low. And I have to be honest, I've been surprised about that over the summer. But I'm so happy about that. We need to keep it that way. We need to keep it that way. We need to all do our part. We need to all, follow the steps that we've addressed this morning and in former meetings. And we as a school district are also going to work very closely with the Department of Health and the State Ed Department. And when we get to the place where we can make further steps to get back to normal, we're going to do so. That's always our goal. We want the children to have the full experience, and in time we're going to get there. But we are definitely going to go slow. We're definitely not going to rush. We are definitely going to keep health and safety as the priority, and it's going to be priority number 1 and 2 and 3, and then everything else is going to fall into line. But it's a good question, and it's a goal that we have for sure.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So I think we're at a place where we can wrap for today. I thank everybody for coming. I have a sense that this was helpful for families. I'm very happy about that. I see us doing this again. There's going to be information that, of course, as a district, we'll be updating everybody. So please regularly check your emails. If anybody is having any difficulty with receiving emails, please contact the school, because that's essential right now, always, but definitely right now. The website is also a good location to get some questions answered. In the form that we sent out on Friday, we also included some helpful links. There's some frequently asked question links, as well as some references to our plan. So please review those. And I do ask all families to keep an eye on the deadline of tomorrow at 3 p.m., Tuesday at 3 p.m., where we're asking all to respond with their thoughts about either in-person or remote learning. And in addition, if children are returning in person, are they selecting to ride the bus or not? Those pieces of information are really helpful and much needed. And we need everybody to respond to that form by tomorrow at 3. So I thank everyone for the kind words. Thank you for your support. As a faculty, we're getting through this because everybody's working with us. So thank you for that. And please say hi to all the boys and girls and let them know that we're looking forward to seeing them soon. Everybody be well. Thank you.